Morning Piro, this is a response to your video Confess or Defend Super Debate. I'm a kind of late entrant to this because I've been offline for a while. I've got very sporadic access, so I'm doing this on my phone camera. I'll try and upload it when I finish. I haven't even watched all the videos yet, but I'll try and catch up. But I've made just a couple of notes based on what I've seen. The first, I think for me, one of the more important things really is to do with this idea of debate and contrasting that with conversation, because sometimes you call it a debate and sometimes you refer to it as a public conversation, and I think there's some interesting things in there. I always have a bit of a problem with the word debate, because debates really they very rarely are exercises in movements toward any kind of a truth. They're, from my perspective at least, they're essentially kind of rhetorical game. Most better universities have debating societies, and debating societies in universities are equivalent to like sports clubs. They're organisations you join, and when you're part of a debating team, it's a mark of your skill at debating that you argue a point you don't necessarily believe in. When you do a formal debate in a university setting, I have to say I don't have first-hand experience of this, but I've seen it. When you're part of an organised debating team in a university, you don't get to choose which side of a debate you're arguing on. Even you will argue for or against a particular motion, and whichever one you're allocated to, you do your argument. So debating really is a rhetorical form, and it's designed to develop certain rhetorical skills of argumentation, not really to do to locating any kind of a truth. And that's one of the reasons why I'm quite frustrated with a lot of the debates. Even at quite a high level, that you get, for example, between religious people and atheists. They are quite clearly forms of entertainment in most cases. So that's the problem I have with debate. And the other thing about debate, which is connected to that, is it really focuses upon the idea of knowledge and information and truth being located within a particular individual. In a debate, each side will make their initial statement, and then there'll be opportunities to respond once or sometimes twice, and then there's usually a vote amongst the audience at the end for who won the debate, and the winner of the debate is kind of associated with the truth, even though there's not really a truth been. That as I say, that's not a truth gathering process. It's a rhetorical exercise, but nevertheless, there's this sense you come out of it that the truth of it, of the whatever this issue is that has been debated, is kind of located within that one individual who stated their case, not that it's arisen out of the interaction. And that's another problem I have. I think the word conversation, which you use extensively, is a much better term. I like the word conversation a lot. There's probably some etymological thing going on there. Converso with, I don't know, whatever. It probably means something to do with speaking with. And I quite like the idea of speaking with. And I think speaking with is much more likely to produce more interesting forms of knowledge than debating, which is speaking against. But what's specific, and I guess this is where about internet and YouTube specifically, conversations. Do they have value? What's their specific values? And I think they do, and I think their particular value comes out of their particular circumstances, because conversation on YouTube is very different to conversation elsewhere. And it's not just the fact that it's public. I've just made a couple of notes here. The first thing, obviously, yes, it is public. When I speak to you, Piro, other people can access this part of the conversation, and that's public. But that's not new. Conversation's always been kind of public. There's always been eavesdroppers and people listening in, and public conversations in that sense have always happened in the forums of the ancient world or whatever. But yeah, it's a continuation of public conversation. Some other unique features I think of this conversation is firstly that it's, to my view at least, it's safe. And I've mentioned this before in videos, and I think it's still something we're not used to. The fact is, Piro, if you're in Hawaii, or I don't know how many thousands of miles, 6,000 miles away from me right now, I don't think we're really evolutionarily prepared for that kind of an interaction. We're used to conversing to people face to face, so that what I say can be followed up with a blow, or followed up with a caress or an embrace, and what you say to me can be followed up similarly, positively or negatively. I think that's the kind of logic that we bring to conversation, the logic of face-to-faceness, and looking into the whites of one another's eyes, and having to negotiate the particularities of two social bodies in a very close space. But this is not like that. This is a safe conversation because I can't hurt you and you can't hurt me. I mean, on a very functional level. I mean, I can say things which will be insulting, but with a bit of practice, you can ignore that. And you can say things which will be insulting. With a bit of practice, I can ignore that. We're in a completely safe environment here. I can't see any dangers. And that changes the nature of conversation, I think. We're also in a persistent conversation. This doesn't go away. And again, that's relatively new. And of course, since there's been recording media and since there's been writing, conversations have persisted to a certain extent. But these things persist in a much more fundamental way. They persist in a way which is... Sorry, my dog's just going in there. Phoebe, sit down. Sit down. Thank you. These are persisting in a way which is quite fundamentally different. They're also asynchronous, these conversations. I'm talking to you now, at whatever time this is, 12:20 on a Friday. I don't know what time, if ever, you'll see this. And other people listening into this conversation may access it in hours, days, months, or years from now. And participate, not just look back on, but participate in. And that's quite different, I think. And the last thing about this conversational media, which I think has really not found its form yet, but should, is that it's processable. It's a conversation that's processable, and that again distinguishes it from other recorded conversations, which have this quality of persistence, and perhaps even other asynchronous conversations in forms of letters or something like that. Because this is processable. This information that we're generating now is being processed by the mechanisms of YouTube in the forms of, those the layouts on the page. It's being processed by your own work there, Piro, doing that kind of lab stuff where it brings up these conversations in different ways. And in the future, undoubtedly, it'll be processed in different ways. There was an interesting article, I think, in Scientific American last month about how, or maybe it was older than that, about how the data generated by Twitter and Facebook, I don't think it mentioned YouTube, but Web 2.0 technologies is set to revolutionize a lot of the social sciences, because social sciences traditionally have worked on, very difficult to access data, the data of conversations and the data of individual expressions, which have been very kind of friable and very difficult to and ephemeral. But suddenly, because of this technology, they're not ephemeral anymore, and all our conversations not only are public and persistent, but they're also accessible in a way which gives them an ability to be processed. So, in the future, these expressions and these conversations that we're having will undoubtedly, I think at least, be available to a different kind of scrutiny than they are now. And this is where I kind of get interested, really, because I'm quite interested, not so much that in 100 years' time someone will look back on conference reports or videos and, that Freddie was boring, interesting, smelly, had a funny hat. I don't think people will be doing that. I think there will be much more interesting tools available. I would hope there will be much more interesting tools available, which allow much more kind of patterned information to be drawn out of these videos, and much more nuanced and interpersonal kinds of behaviour to be drawn out. So it's not my behaviour or your behaviour or Gary's videos or anybody else's videos that stand out and become interesting, but there's something about the patterns of all of our activities swarming around one another that creates some kind of interesting piece of information. That's what I'd like to think. Whether it ever will be, I don't know. And that's part of the nature of the conversation that we have. Just so if I can just go through those points again. It's a conversation, and it is a public conversation, but it's a safe public conversation, one that's persistent, that's asynchronous, and that is capable of being processed in ways which reveal higher order patterns. Yeah, that's my take on it. Just want to do bits about your videos. You said something about video as opposed to text. I think video is useful as opposed to text, just because it's a denser medium. It's more complex. I don't know what will be important in 100 years' time. I think it's highly unlikely it'll be the words that come out of my mouth in terms of their ideas, Because certainly in all the videos I've said, I can't remember ever saying anything that was an original idea. And I don't think I've ever heard anything on YouTube that was ever an original idea. I don't want to offend anyone there, but I don't think this medium is one that's lending itself to the generation of totally new knowledge. I mean, let me qualify that. It can be new and original expressions, and I see lots of that. But totally new knowledge is not being generated from what I can see on YouTube. It might be being developed elsewhere and put online, but not even much of that. So I don't think the information is at that level, but I've no idea what level it is at. And just in the way that we find out things from, in archaeology by looking through the trash bins of history, we look on midden piles and we look on spoil heaps from 2,000 years ago to find out what people were doing. It may well be that the information that we're producing, not in terms of our ideas, but just in terms of our expressions, is what will count in 100 or 200 or 1,000 years' time. It might be the shapes of our faces, it might be the expressions we're pulling, it might be the intonations of our words, it might be our gestures. I have no idea where the density of information is, of our patterned information, interpersonal patterned information. I have no idea which would be the most relevant, or what the relationships between that kind of stuff will be in our words. So that's that, really. Yeah. On a more personal note, I mean, I find YouTube and YouTube specifically, actually, very useful for all kinds of reasons, and generally beneficial. But it is a bit of a time sponge. I have spent a lot of time hovering on YouTube and hovering around videos and